Alright, what's up guys? Today we're going to be critiquing Jon Loeb's solves. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. And just so you guys know kind of the format we're going to be doing this in, I'm going to be going through the solves. You'll get to watch the solve, then I'm going to walk through it and talk about what he could have done better. And then at the end of the video, I will give general thoughts about what I think he needs to do to improve instead of trying to do that in the middle of everything. So the beginning portion will mostly be me critiquing how he could have been more efficient or solved a pair better or better algs and all of that. So let's get right to it. Alright, so before we start, I just want you guys to know that Jon appears to be color neutral, and to avoid everyone getting confused, I am going to put his cross on white. So for this scramble, he did green cross, so if whatever cross color you have, put that on front. So I did white front and blue top for this scramble. So if you guys want to follow along, do blue front and or blue top and white front. And here we go. So for your cross, it could have been a little bit better. So right here you have these two solved right here, and then you've got these right here. So what you did here is you did U prime and then R prime L F and then U2 and then did a B2 to solve that. And what you could have done instead is I've got the same scramble here. So I would have done blue front, yellow top, and I've got the two solved ones back here and solved both of these at the same time. So I would have done U prime, L prime, which puts this back here, and now I can solve this with a B. But what I can also do is I've got the red and blue one right here, so I can do R prime F, and I've got these two solved, and I can solve both of these right here. So I could do R2 B, and now I've got the cross, but you know, that's just how I would have done it. Moving on with what you did here, the next thing that you did is it looks like you saw the blue-orange pair here. You did R prime, U prime, R, U prime, and solved this. So that's pretty standard. There's nothing really wrong with that, so good job there. But then this next pair definitely could have used some work. So what you did is L, L prime, L prime. So what you meant to do there is just an L prime, but you did L and then L2, and I assume that's just from, you know, fumbling with the cube, kind of poor look ahead. But so you did L prime, U prime, L, and then you went to do this, so R, U prime, or R, U, R prime, U2, Y, and insert it in the back. So in this case, what I would have actually done is, you got these two right here, I would have done U prime, U prime, L, which pairs them up, and then either rotated and inserted like that, or just inserted with F moves like that. That's personally how I would have approached it. The next pair that you did something a little similar where you kind of stumbled with it. So you did U2, U, and then went for this pair right here with L prime, U2, L, and then solved these to the back like that. But what I would have done is, since you had the corner back here and the edge right here, what you could have done is U, taken this edge out, and now you can just pair it in the back. That's what I would have done for this pair. So this last pair definitely could have used some work. What you ended up doing is U prime, Y prime, U prime, and then separating these with R, U prime, R prime, U, and then rotating again and pairing it in the back. So what I would have done is you had this right here, and instead of doing all those rotations, you could just solve it with L moves. So you could do L prime, U prime, L prime, and now you've got these set up to just be paired and inserted like that. That's how I would have handled it, and you definitely could have avoided the rotations. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Always avoid rotations as much as you can. So when you got to OLL, things got pretty locky here. And I personally don't really like the alg you use. It might work for some, but personally for me, I like to use something else. You did R prime, F, R prime, F prime, R2, U2, and then did a, you know, rotation and back sledge like that. What I like to do in this case is I go like this, flick right there, and go like that. I personally like that a little more than what you did. It can be done very quickly, so I would work on trying to switch to that unless you're really attached to that alg, but it looked like it was pretty locky and you're probably looking for something new. And then when you got here, you actually did an R-perm that I haven't seen many people use for two-hand. I think it's probably fine. I prefer the default one, you know, that just goes R prime U2, R U2. I prefer that one, but you did this one right here. And I don't really think that's bad, honestly. I'm sure it can be done very quickly. So if you like it, keep sticking with it. Didn't see too much problems with your peel out there. Alright, so if you guys want to follow along, he did red cross this solve, so if you would like to follow along with your orientation, I did white on right and orange on top for this scrambling. So getting into it, you did a pretty weird cross. You actually didn't even finish cross initially. I'm not sure if that was on purpose or not, but you did L, which brought this blue up, U2, R2 to solve both of these, and then you did U prime L2. So you got 3/4 of your cross, and then you went and solved this pair. And if you still wanted to solve this pair, what you could have done with that cross is solved this with D prime LD, and now you'd have your cross and this. But you actually went ahead and just solved this pair right here. So you did U2, Y prime, and then insert like that, and then rotate it back and solved this by taking it out and then doing that. Personally, I would have done something a little different. What I would have ended up doing is holding red front, so you've got these right here. I see that this is opposite, so what I'm going to do is force these two to be opposite by doing R, D prime, R prime, and then D prime again. So now I've got two opposites and this one opposite. And then what I can end up doing is U, R prime, D2, R prime, and now I've got my cross. That's how I would have approached cross on this one. There's many different ways you could approach it depending on if you wanted to preserve pairs or not, but if I was going in the most basic form of making a cross, that's probably how I would have approached it. Alright, so next up, this part was pretty rough. What you ended up doing is taking out this back piece right here with R prime U R, and then doing a Y, and solving this pair with L moves. And this one is pretty bad, and I'll show you how I would have done it, but you did L2, U2, L prime U2, L2. And even if you really still wanted to do that, how I would have approached that is instead of rotating to the left, at least rotate to the right. Maybe you're a left-handed solver, but if you aren't a left-handed solver, it's always better to do the moves on the right. So I would have just done the same thing on the right. But if I was actually approaching this how you had it, if I had this back here, honestly, I don't even think I would have done this pair. I would have done this blue-red one right here, because I could take it right here and solve it to the back like that. But if you wanted to still go off solving this and you were really set on taking this out, you could take it out like that and either do the normal beginner pair up where you go like that and then solve it with F moves, or you could solve it with keyhole by doing U, D, and then, or D prime, and then inserting this with F moves and rotating back if you really wanted to. Alright, so for your next pair, this really wasn't that bad. You rotated and then did U2 and solved this pair right here with R prime, U, R, U2, and then insert in the back. Really, there was nothing wrong with this. I don't really have a problem with that. I think you did just fine there. And then for your fourth pair, what you did is R prime, U prime, R prime, U prime, R prime, U, R, U, R. This is a pretty common insert. I see this quite a bit. I personally don't like to handle that case like that. What I like to do is R prime, F prime, R, U prime, R prime, F. I personally prefer that. I think that's a little more finger trick friendly for me. There's a lot of regrips in the way you did it. So you could try doing it like this. I think that's quite a bit faster, at least for me. But this also isn't that bad because it also, if you don't already know, it preserves EO. It doesn't actually affect last layer at all. It just swaps the two edges. So it's good if you wanted to skip OLL. So next up right here, you just did a soon, and then you had a G perm. And personally, I'm not a huge fan of doing the G perm how you did it. I like to do it from this angle right here with R2, F2. It's a pretty nice peel. I'll leave it on the screen. But I'm sure some people can do this one fast though. I just never really liked it. So here you go. And then finished. All right, so for this solve, he did blue cross. So if you'd like to follow along, I did green front and white in back. So it looks like you're actively trying to do X crosses based on the last solve and this solve, which is a good thing. You should be looking to doing X crosses. X crosses is actually something I haven't really ventured too far into. I can do it, when it's somewhat obvious, but I don't really actively seek it. And it looks like you are. So you've got the idea of trying to do X crosses. You just need to work on making them more efficient. So in this first one, you built a 2x2x2. So you held it right here with green front and yellow top, and you saw this pair and this right back here. At least that's what I'm assuming. And what you did is U prime, R, U prime, R prime, U2, R, U2, R, which built this right here, which is not the most efficient way if you wanted to build that. And then finishing off your cross, things got a little problematic, and I'll show you some better ways you could approach those. So what you ended up doing here is U, M prime, U2, M. So the first thing here is that you didn't have to do M prime, U2, M. You could have done F2, and that still doesn't affect your block right there. So you went from right here, you could have just done F2, D, F prime, D prime, and that still preserves your pair back here. But we'll keep going with what you did. So U, M prime, U2, M. Then you took this out, R, U, R prime, rotated, and then inserted it. So as you can see, what I ended up doing there was a lot less moves. I probably really wouldn't even have gone for that X cross like that. I may have found a way to preserve the pair, but I probably would have built my cross just completely ignoring the pair. So we'll keep going from what we have right here. So your next pair was actually fine. You solved this pair right here, and you just did it the way anyone else would. So like this, insert in the back. And then for your third pair here, you went for this blue-red pair right here. And what you ended up doing was a U, Y prime, pairing them up, utilizing the back slot. So I mean, you had the right idea in utilizing the back slot, and then you did a D prime and inserted. But really what you could have done is you had this right here, so you could do U2 and utilize this as the empty slot by using L moves. So L prime, U2, L, now pairs them up, and you could insert them right in the front. So you had the right idea of utilizing the empty slot right here, but you could do it without rotating. Always try and look out for ways to avoid rotations if you can. So for your fourth pair here, I'm noticing that you waste moves a lot, and I think this is just due to lack of proper look ahead, but you did U2, U prime, U, which just brought it back right here. All you really needed to do was U2. So you wasted a couple U moves right there, but then how you solved the fourth pair was just fine. This is how I would expect anyone to solve it, with R, U2, R prime, U prime, and then inserting like that. So you were fine minus the couple of moves wasted right there. Now the OLL here, this was a little rough, and I'm going to show you a better way to do this. So again, you did U, U prime, and typically for OLL you don't really need to waste moves like that. From just looking at the top and the sides, you can always tell what OLL you have. I still have kind of a bad habit of AUFing. I'm trying to break it, and I would encourage you to work on trying to do that instead of wasting moves. But what you ended up doing for this OLL is M, U2, R prime, U prime, R, U prime, R, U2, and then R, U, M prime. And personally, I'm not a huge fan of that approach. How I would like to do it is from the opposite angle, and I go like this: little r, cancel into anti-soon, and then U prime, M. That's just me. I personally like to do it that way more, and I think that would be better overall. I think the finger trick is a lot easier for that. And then for PLL, you just had an M slice U prime that you used, and I'm totally fine with that. That's what I like to use too. So M2, and finished. Alright, so for this scramble he did yellow cross, so if you'd like to follow along, I did white on bottom and green in front. So this was your best solve of the average, and you actually did pretty good on it. For the most part, I really didn't spot that many problems or things that I would fix with it. So good job there. So you held red front and white on bottom here, and you did R prime U2, L prime U, and then rotate and D. The only thing I would have done different there, I would have done the same exact thing that you did, except that I would have done R prime U2, R prime F, and then D, just to avoid the rotation. But how you did it is just fine. I mean, it's the same thing, just different execution. And then The only flaw that I really noticed heavily in this average is that you wasted a lot of moves in F2L. So you did U prime, and this one I kind of understand. When you did the U, you saw that this pair right was here, but typically I like to try and avoid doing moves like that. I also have this problem a little bit, but you know, another thing I'm trying to break, so I would scan the cube a little like that. But you just solve this pair right here by pairing them up, paired it up, and then insert it in the back. Nothing wrong with how you did that one. And then this one I may have done a little different, but essentially the same thing, and this is where you wasted a couple more moves. So you did U2 U prime, which just put it right here. So what you could have done is just U, but I assume you were looking when you did those U moves and you spotted this and then put it over here. So you paired them up, that's fine, and then you did U2 and inserted it like this. Little L prime, U prime, L, U, M. And I actually use that for the back pretty frequently. For the front, I think I would personally just do this. Or maybe even, since I know that this slot is solved, I would rotate and put it in the back, and now I have these two F2L pairs in the front here. But more than likely, I would end up just doing it with an F move. But really, how you did it isn't that bad. It's being pretty nitpicky, but it is a couple extra moves over this. So next up, you did the green-red pair, and here was a couple more moves that got wasted. You did U prime U2 to put it right here, and again, I'm assuming you were just spotting these as you were going, but try and avoid that as much as you can. And then you did this, you know, just fine. You paired it up, RU, R prime, and then inserted. And then you went for this back pair right here. You did U, and then just inserted the pair. And then you had this OLL, and it looks like you did, you know, some more moves to find it. You did U2 and then U, which got it right here. I would suggest just scanning it and then doing that, and then did OLL just fine. And then your R perm was fine. You just ended up doing the RUD one, which is pretty standard these days. So you did that just fine. And I can see why this was your best solve. Most things weren't too inefficient. You just wasted a couple moves. So I think if you work on smoothing those out, you will definitely be on your way to improving.
Okay.
All right, so for this scramble, he did green cross. So if you'd like to follow along, I did white front and green on bottom. All right, so starting off, I see that you did green front and white on bottom, and you have this block right, or piece right here, and this one right here. And I see that when you do R2, it'll bring it over here. So it looks like you had the right idea here. You did R2 LF, which now got 3 of your cross pieces, and left this one in the back. And you just did U prime, little R prime, UR. And honestly, I would have done the same exact thing there, so I think that's fine with how you solved that cross. All right, so your first pair, it looks like you were going for green-white, and there's a couple ways you could have done this. What you ended up doing is U2, L prime, U prime, L, and then solving these, like that. And that can definitely be solved more efficiently. So a couple ways you could do it is you could do L prime, U prime, L, which take these out, and then doing U2 and inserting. Or what you could do is U, L prime, UL, and then RU, R prime to insert like that. And that's how I would have done that pair. So what you ended up doing from here is L prime, U prime, L, U prime, which separated them. And then you did a U. So you undid the move that you did right there. And then you rotated and paired these two up and then inserted. So right there, that's pretty long, definitely longer than that pair should take. And really all mine was hiding the corner, moving the edge, and then joining them. So definitely take a look at that pair because this one was pretty inefficient. So the next pair you went for is this green-red pair, which I suppose is the easiest pair to see. And how you ended up doing it is U prime, L, U2, L prime, U prime, and then rotating and solving these two right here. And really, that's not too bad, honestly. I've seen worse. How I would have probably, if I had to do this pair, I probably would have done it with righty moves with U, R, U2, R prime, and then the same thing as U. But looking at this right now, I can see that I have these two back here, and I would prefer to solve these first, like this, because I don't have to rotate to solve these at all. So I could put that in the back right there. That's what I would have liked to do there. But if you're going right here, instead of doing lefty moves, I would have done it righty and put it in the back like that. All right, so for your fourth pair, you had this blue-orange right here, and you did U2 rotated, and then you separated them. This is actually very common how most people would solve this pair is RU, R prime, U2, and then join them up. Now what you did differently is you did U2, R, U2, R prime, and I don't actually see any reason for you to do that. So what you should have done is just U and then insert. That makes more sense in that case right there. Now one more thing too is how I would have liked to approach this. You know, doing this really isn't that bad, but another way that I found that I like to do that's RUD is R prime D prime, put the edge in here, RU prime R prime, DR, and then you can insert that like that. I don't necessarily think that's better. I know a lot of people will do exactly what you did, but this is another option if you're interested in it. So here you just did COLL, so you did U2, and then the COLL AUG. And that one's actually not that bad, but the sad part about this is you could have skipped it if you used the other one. So it's the same thing, but from the front, and I wouldn't expect you to know it's gonna skip, but I prefer the front one to the back. So it's the same thing, but you do this. I prefer that, and it would have skipped, but of course I don't think you're doing ZBL or anything, but just for future reference, I do prefer the front one like that. And then from here, you just had an H perm. Nothing too fancy about that. And those are all the solves, and now let's talk about an overview of what I think you could do better. So the first thing I noticed when watching your solves is that your finger tricks aren't very smooth. They look very jerky, as if you're trying too hard to turn the cube, and this might actually be due to your cube. It sounded very dry and overall just pretty bad. I wasn't really sure what cube it was, but I'd suggest getting a new one. Really anything on the market right now is fine. A Gans, a Thunderclap, a Tanglong, Meiying, really any of those will be totally fine for you. But yeah, definitely upgrade that. I think your solves will become a lot better when your turning becomes a bit more fluent. And the second thing is that your solves aren't very efficient. I would suggest watching some more advanced F2L videos to fix your longer cases. Sit down and just play with the cube a little more. I think people get in these habits of just doing constant solves, and that typically won't help you fix your bad habits. When you're just toying with the cube and actively looking for what your bad cases are, it really helps narrow out which ones are really long and you need to fix when you're doing slower solves. So definitely work on that. And as for cross, I would suggest going to cubesolve.es, solv.es, and look at reconstructions on there, because you'll find a lot of, like, you know, world record reconstructions, and you can see how people built their crosses and just the solutions overall. I think not enough people do this, and I think it's something that would actually be very helpful. So definitely give that a shot. Those were the biggest problems that I spotted with your solves, and I hope that helped you fix some of them. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you later.